For the first 30 years of his life, he was untouchable, arguably the greatest entertainer who ever lived. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. The superstar became a spectacle, the musician became a punchline, and a world that had once worshipped him turned. Once the 90s arrived, the media machine locked onto him like a target, never to let go. To understand what the 90s did to Michael Jackson, you have to understand what the 80s built. After Thriller, the best-selling album in history, Michael Jackson wasn't just famous anymore. He had become a kind of cultural weather system. Inescapable, elemental, and something you just had to adapt to. His next release, Bad, came out in 1987. By the end of the decade, he had sold over 25 million copies. For any other artist, that would have been called a triumph. But the press called it a disappointment, because it wasn't Thriller. And that, right there, is the first crack. Not in Michael Jackson, in the relationship between Michael Jackson and the world watching him. The goalposts had moved. The standard he was being held to was one that no human could sustainably meet. And the media, sensing vulnerability for the first time, moved in. The story started small, whispers really, about his appearance, his nose, and his skin colour.
It's a lot of talk. A lot of people are talking about it and how foolish he looks.
The look, well, the new look is not too hot, but the album is great.
But whispers have a way of becoming roars.
An attempt to become the modern mass man, he has become raceless and sexless, neither black nor white, neither straight nor gay, male nor female. Indeed, that little clip from Bad, it looks very much like some of Sister Janet Jackson's recent videos.
By the late 80s, the British tabloids, never known for restraint, had given him a nickname.
Michael Jackson, otherwise known as MJ or Wacko Jacko.
He despised it. It wasn't just a nickname to him, it was a boundary being crossed. It was the media stripping away his humanity and replacing it with a specimen jar. He wasn't a man anymore, he was something to be dissected. It stuck precisely because it suggested something the public was increasingly hungry for. The idea that behind the celebrity, there was something unstable, something strange, and something worth investigating. And then, in 1989, he did something he had never really done before. He responded, in song form. Leave Me Alone wasn't just a song, it was a rebuttal, a music video stuffed with the exact tabloid imagery that had been tormenting him. The hyperbaric chamber, the Elephant Man bones, Bubbles the chimp, turned into a funfair of self-aware absurdity. Look at what you've made of me, he seemed to be saying. Look at what you've built. It was clever. It was defiant. It was also, in retrospect, a sign of something significant. Michael Jackson, the man who had been so bulletproof he had never needed to defend himself, was now on the defense. The image was no longer fully his to control, and the 90s hadn't even started yet. Something else was changing at the same time. The media itself was evolving. The late 80s and early 90s saw the rise of a far more aggressive tabloid culture. 24-hour news cycles, global syndication, and endless appetite for spectacle. The press had found a new angle. And Michael Jackson had become something even more valuable than a star. He had become the story. And stories like this never end happily ever after. It's 1991. Michael Jackson parts ways with Quincy Jones, the producer who had shaped his sound for over a decade. On the surface, it was a creative decision. Jackson wanted new collaborators with fresh, innovative ideas. He brought in Teddy Riley, architect of New Jack Swing, to create something beat-driven, more urban, and more digital sounding. But read between the lines and the decision says something more profound. Michael Jackson was feeling the ground shift beneath him. The music industry was changing. Grunge was coming, hip-hop was rising, the polished pop spectacle that had made him a music god was starting to feel like yesterday's version of the future. Dangerous was his answer to that, an attempt to prove he could adapt, to prove he was still on the cutting edge of an ever-changing sonic landscape. And in many ways it worked.
You probably heard the uproar over the new Michael Jackson video.
Michael Jackson video is an event in itself,
which the pop world has waited for 4 years.
An estimated 500 million people watched it on its first night. 500 million people. Nearly 10% of the world's population at the time. But look closer at the album, past the spectacle, and a different picture starts to emerge. The second track, Why You Wanna Trip On Me, stands out. Here, Jackson contrasts social issues with the scrutiny placed on him, questioning why the focus keeps returning to celebrity rather than the problems outside it.
They say I'm different, they don't understand, but there's a bigger problem that's much more in demand.
But the whole record carries something underneath it. Frustration, pressure, a sense of being watched, something closing in, because something was. And that undercurrent matters, because Dangerous isn't just a stylistic pivot, it's a document of a man in transition. The first half of the album chooses a zeitgeist, the new jack swing of Jam, the seduction of In the Closet, the smooth R&B perfection of Remember the Time. Slick, cool, and deliberate. But the second half tells a different story. Heal the World, Will You Be There, Keep the Faith. Songs that feel less like pop music and more like a man reaching for something to hold on to. Something solid, something that couldn't be taken away. In hindsight, it reads almost like a premonition. The first half of Dangerous is Michael Jackson trying to stay relevant. The second half is Michael Jackson trying to stay sane. And the tragedy is, he had no idea what was coming. 1993 would turn out to be one of the worst years of his life. And yet, it started off strongly. In January, Michael Jackson did something no artist had ever done before. He turned the Super Bowl halftime show into a global event. For 90 seconds, he didn't even move. And the crowd still lost their minds. It was the clearest possible reminder of what he still was. Not just relevant, but dominant. The next month, he sat down with Oprah for what would become one of the most watched television interviews in history. 90 million people tuned in. He talked about his childhood, about his father's abuse, about the skin condition, vitiligo, that he said had caused his changing appearance. He cried, or came close to it.
Your father would tease you about your pimples?
He would tell me I'm ugly.
Your father would say
Yes,
that?
he would.
Did he ever beat you?
Yes.
He did.
Yes.
And that was difficult to take, getting
Yes.
beaten and going on stage and performing.
Yes.
Are you bleaching your skin? And is your skin lighter because you don't like being black?
I have a skin disorder that destroys the pigmentation of the skin. It's something that I cannot help, okay? But when people make up stories that I don't want to be who I am, it hurts me.
And the public, that vast, restless, hungry public, felt something shift. Temporarily at least. For a moment, they saw not a myth, not Wacko Jacko, but a human, isolated, damaged, lonely inside a fortress of his own fame. Sympathy, briefly, flooded back. But everything would change in a matter of months.
We have more now on Michael Jackson, the latest on the investigation into allegations of molestation. As we've reported, there are two aspects to this: the civil suit brought by the 13-year-old accuser and the criminal investigation by the police and the DA.
In August, a 13-year-old boy named Jordan Chandler told a psychiatrist that Michael Jackson had sexually abused him. The story broke within days, and the world Michael Jackson had spent 30 years constructing, the world of myth and magic and untouchability, began to crumble.
Since launching his Dangerous tour, Michael Jackson has been dogged by accusations he molested a 13-year-old boy.
The investigation that followed was extraordinary in its scope and its brutality.
The entertainer's life has become a tornado of rumors and accusations since a teenage boy earlier this year said Jackson sexually molested him.
On August 23rd, the Los Angeles Police Department searched the singer's Neverland Ranch in Santa Barbara County.
Investigators conducted a strip search of Jackson's body, photographing him in detail to compare against descriptions Chandler had provided.
The significance of the police wanting to search Michael and to have him stripped is that the little boy, the 13-year-old boy who has charged that Michael Jackson sexually molested him, is saying that he has seen markings on Michael's body that he could only have seen had he seen Michael either partially naked or indeed fully naked.
The details that emerged in press leaks, and there were many, were lurid. Deliberately so.
On September 14th, a civil lawsuit filed on behalf of the boy accused Jackson of masturbating and orally copulating the alleged victim.
Whether they reflected truth or prosecution strategy or pure tabloid appetite is a question that has never cleanly been answered. What is undeniable is the effect. His Pepsi deal evaporated. Radio stations began to distance themselves. The Dangerous Tour, which had been running since 1992, was abruptly cancelled. Jackson cited addiction to painkillers, a dependency he said that had developed following a scalp operation. If Neverland was the enclosure built to keep the world out, the pills were the internal walls. He wasn't just numbing pain, he was numbing the noise. His statement was released to the world in a recorded message. His voice, audibly fragile.
After my tour ended, I remained out of the country undergoing treatment for a dependency on pain medication. There have been many disgusting statements made recently concerning allegations of improper conduct on my part. These statements about me are totally false. I will say that I am particularly upset by the handling of this mass matter by the incredible, terrible mass media. I have been forced to submit to a dehumanizing and humiliating examination by the Santa Barbara County Sheriff Department and the Los Angeles Police Department earlier this week. They served a search warrant on me which allowed them to view and photograph my body, including my penis.
He had become, overnight, the most scrutinized person on the planet. Every movement documented, every detail analyzed, every version of him debated in real time.
What 35-year-old man is going to take a little boy and stay with him for 30 days and take another boy and stay with him for 5 days in a room and never leave the room?
January 1994, Jackson settled the civil case brought by Jordan Chandler's family out of court. The settlement was reported to be in the region of $23 million. He denied any wrongdoing. His lawyers maintained the settlement was a pragmatic financial decision, that fighting the case while simultaneously facing criminal investigation was not survivable, whatever the truth.
For years I have been working for Michael, who unfortunately has been the victim of this and other types of extortion attempts.
The criminal investigation was eventually dropped. No charges were filed, but in the court of public opinion, the only court that truly governed Michael Jackson's life, the verdict was less clear. The settlement read, to many, as an admission, an implicit acknowledgement of something. His team argued the opposite, that an innocent man, terrorized by false accusations and unwilling to see his life destroyed by litigation, had made the only rational choice available to him.
The resolution of this case is in no way an admission of guilt by Michael Jackson.
Both of these things could be argued. Both were argued, loudly and at length, for years afterward. What made this moment so difficult to understand and so compelling was the contradiction at the centre of it all. Michael Jackson was still the most recognisable entertainer on the planet, and yet increasingly isolated. Still capable of commanding global attention, and yet more divisive than ever. The bigger he remained, the more fragile everything around him became. What matters here is this. By this point in his career, Michael Jackson was no longer defining the narrative. He was reacting to it, and it would never fully go back to the way it was. Out of this would come something else entirely. Not recovery, not redemption, but retaliation, in the form of music. June 1995. The River Thames, London. A barge moves slowly through the water, carrying a 10-metre statue of Michael Jackson, gazing serenely over the city. It was a promotional stunt for his new album. Audacious, surreal, slightly deranged, and absolutely, completely calculated. Because the album it was promoting wasn't a peace offering. It was a declaration of war.
It's shaping up as the musical event of the year. Michael Jackson's new double album, His Story, went on sale at midnight, and fans coast to coast turned out to snap up the first copies. The Jackson publicity machine is going full bore to make sure that this CD puts the king of pop back on the throne.
History is one of the most confrontational, most fascinating records ever made by a major pop artist. It's a double album. The first disc is a greatest hits collection. The second disc is 77 minutes of original material that functions less like a pop album and more like a public prosecution.
Along with Sister Janet on the track Scream, the His Story album will include guest appearances by Boyz II Men, the Notorious B.I.G., Slash, Shaquille O'Neal and R. Kelly, who's also among Michael's guest co-producers, along with Dallas Austin of TLC fame and Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Epic Records say His Story is the most intensely personal and provocative work of Michael's career, with lyrics that, quote, respond to the events that have overtaken his life in the last couple of years.
Michael Jackson, in the 2 years since the Chandler allegations, had been silent, largely invisible, recovering, reportedly from both addiction and the psychological devastation of public accusation. History was the end of that silence. From the opening seconds, the tone is unmistakable. Scream opens with Jackson screaming, literally, and then he lists everything. The accusations, the headlines, the cameras, the noise. Not metaphorically. Again, almost literally. Like a man reading out the charges against him and refusing every single one.
I'm tired of injustice. I'm tired of the scheme. Your lies are disgusting. So what does it mean? Okay, wait, let me write. When kicking me down.
When kicking me down.
I got to get up.
I got to get up.
As bad as it sounds.
As bad as it sounds.
The whole system
is.
And then a wall of industrial sound courtesy of Jam and Lewis. Janet's voice cutting through it, and visuals of the two of them alone in space smashing things. The video cost $7 million. At the time, the most expensive music video ever made. It won the Grammy for Best Music Video Short Form. It would be his last. In total, he won just 2 Grammys in the 1990s, a stark contrast to the 11 he collected in the previous decade. But the Grammy almost feels beside the point. Scream isn't really a song, it's a pressure valve. 2 years of rage and humiliation compressed into 4 minutes and released. And that was just the opener. They Don't Care About Us arrived as their album's penultimate single, and immediately ignited a controversy that threatened to overshadow everything else. The song's lyrics included references, oblique in one version, more pointed in another, that Jewish groups argued was anti-Semitic. The word Jew and another appeared in a context that, depending on your reading, could be interpreted as a slur.
It was incredulous that Michael Jackson would select words like that.
Rabbi Marvin Heyer was referring to the song They Don't Care About Us that includes these lyrics. Reacting to criticism, Jackson sent the rabbi a letter of apology and said albums not yet shipped would include a disclaimer that the singer had not meant to offend anyone.
Jackson apologized and the offending words were eventually censored. He said the words had been used as an expression of frustration, that he had not intended any anti-Semitic meaning, that he loved all people equally.
When I say Jew me, sue me, everybody do me, kick me, kike me, don't you black or white me, I'm talking about myself as the victim.
The controversy refused to die entirely. But here is the thing about They Don't Care About Us that gets overlooked in the noise around the particular furore. Listen to the rest of the song. It's a song about persecution, about being hunted, about systems, legal, media, institutional, that grind people down regardless of their guilt or innocence.
Beat me, hate me, you can never break me. Will me, thrill me, you can never kill me.
Whether or not you believe Jackson wrote it specifically about his own experience, the autobiographical reading is almost inescapable. This was a man who felt the world had turned on him. He felt the press had manufactured a monster where a person had been, who felt, whether justifiably or not, like a target.
Because you get to a point where you get tired of people lying. I get tired of situations like this, where people completely lie on me, and I'm sick of it.
Next in the track list came Stranger in Moscow. If Scream is anger, and They Don't Care About Us is defiance, then Stranger in Moscow is vulnerability, something more introspective. It's a song about loneliness so complete it has become a kind of dissociation. Jackson said he wrote it during the Dangerous tour, alone in his hotel room in Moscow, feeling the first tremors of what would become the 1993 catastrophe. Whether the timeline is exactly right is secondary to what the song communicates. This is a man describing himself as a ghost, present in the world but not of it, watched, always watched, but fundamentally unseen. For all the military imagery and the grandiose spectacle of the history era, Stranger in Moscow is its truest document. But it wasn't alone. The album is packed with songs that feel like a direct response to the media machine around him. The Dallas Austin produced This Time Around, the Jam and Lewis produced Tabloid Junkie, but to name just a few. Songs so raw, so unfiltered, that for the first time in his career, Michael Jackson is heard cursing on record.
Just because you read it in the magazine or see it on the TV screen, don't make it factual. They say he's homosexual.
The man who had spent decades carefully curating every syllable he had put on tape had finally run out the polished ways to say what he needed to say. Take the track DS specifically. It is, on the surface, a guitar-driven, propulsive piece of music, driving, almost enjoyable, until you listen to what it actually is. A record in which he names, by thinly veiled implication, the actual prosecutor pursuing him, Thomas Snedden, the Santa Barbara district attorney who had led the criminal investigation against him. Not a vague reference, not a metaphor, a song, on a mainstream pop album, about the man trying to put him in prison.
2 years after Jackson's first child molestation investigation by Snedden, the singer wrote a song about a cold, cold man named Dom Sheldon. Some Jackson fans are convinced it's a thinly veiled reference to Tom Snedden.
No artist at that level, before or since, has done anything quite like it. It is either an act of extraordinary courage or extraordinary recklessness. And the line between those two things, in Michael Jackson's life, was always very thin.
Money.
And there are other tracks tied directly to the wreckage of 1993. Money, a song that isn't subtle about what it thinks motivated the people who came for him. The whole machinery of accusation, litigation, and public destruction had, at its root, a far simpler explanation.
Anything for money.
And childhood, perhaps the most quietly devastating thing on the entire album. A song so nakedly autobiographical, it barely feels like a pop track. Jackson essentially asking the world to understand that what it had spent years mocking, the amusement park, the animals, the refusal to grow up, wasn't eccentricity. It was grief. The grief of a childhood taken from him before he had ever had the chance to live it. Alongside Stranger in Moscow, it is the closest he had ever come on record to simply telling the truth about himself. The History World Tour ran from 1996 to 1997, 82 shows across 5 continents, an estimated 4.5 million people attended. The staging was extraordinary for the time. Tanks, soldiers, a 2-story stage set. Jackson arrived at venues in military motorcades. The imagery was not accidental. He was positioning himself, consciously, as a figure of global significance. Not just a pop star, a symbol. Something that had transcended the tawdry specifics of legal investigations and tabloid allegations. In fact, for some, global significance wasn't even the ceiling. The David Foster-produced Earth song had already divided opinion. Critics picked apart its messianic imagery. Jackson surrounded by the suffering of the world, arms outstretched, the wind machine working overtime. To his fans, it was a sweeping, genuine plea for the planet. To his detractors, it was a man who had already compared himself to Peter Pan and Napoleon, now quietly auditioning for the role of Jesus Christ. At the 1996 Brit Awards, while Jackson played the Messiah on stage, performing Earth Song, Jarvis Cocker stormed the set just to mock him. And that, perhaps, was the moment the armour cracked in a way that no legal settlement or stadium tour could repair. Because you can fight a lawsuit, you can fight a tabloid, you can even fight a criminal investigation, but you can't fight being the punchline.
I was just sat there, and watching it and feeling a bit ill because he's there doing his Jesus acts. And it seemed to me that there was quite a lot of other people who found it quite distasteful as well. And I just thought, stage is there, I'm here. You could actually do something about it and say, this is a load of rubbish if you want.
The whole era felt like a man screaming, look at me, look at this scale, look at what I'm capable of. But when the tour ends, the stadium's empty, the cameras go home, the headlines are still there. They never went. And during this period, there was one other story in his world that the media couldn't get enough of. One linked to another king of pop. In May 1994, 4 months after the Chandler settlement, Michael Jackson married Lisa Marie Presley, the daughter of Elvis, the union of two pop dynasties.
Lisa Marie says she is very much in love, and I dedicate my life to being his wife. We both look forward to raising a family together.
The press received it with near universal skepticism, a PR exercise most concluded, a strategic move to rehabilitate his image, to counter the insinuations about his character, to demonstrate, look, a wife, a normal relationship, a normal man.
And what about the publicity stunt about him being a child molester?
They just seem to be so opposite.
I think he's just doing it just to get the pressure off of him. So, they say he's not gay or whatever he is.
Well, I don't care anything about Michael Jackson. I can't imagine he'd marry a woman. I think he's trying to deceive the people, that trying to cover up what he did with that little kid.
They're probably the only two people who've actually grown up in such a bizarre manner that maybe they feel very comfortable with one another.
Whether it was genuine, whether two of the most isolated, mythology-burdened people in the history of pop music had found something real in each other, remains genuinely contested.
He's amazing. I really admire him. I respect him. I admire him. I'm in love with him. And no, we don't sleep in separate bedrooms. Thank you very much.
One question they most wanted to ask of you.
Do we have sex?
We have. This is about the skepticism.
Yes, yes, yes.
And we have read in the papers that you are expecting a child.
Did we marry out of convenience? That's really interesting to me.
That's
really
ridiculous.
interesting to me. Well, why wouldn't we have a lot in common? That's the question. Why?
What is less contested is that it didn't work. As a PR exercise, if that's what it was, it failed. The marriage lasted 20 months. They divorced in 1996. And before the ink was dry on the divorce papers, Jackson had married again. This time to Debbie Rowe, a nurse who had worked with his dermatologist and would become the mother of his first two children.
It's deja vu all over again. Less than a year after divorcing Lisa Marie, marrying man Michael Jackson is doing it once more.
Michael Jackson is a married man again. He walked down the aisle down under today with the woman who is carrying his child.
The speed of it, the strangeness of it, it fed exactly the narrative his handlers had been trying to kill.
All we know is that Jacko met his new bride, Debbie Rowe, 15 years ago in his plastic surgeon's office. She's 6 months pregnant, and he's denied reports they used artificial insemination, or that he paid her over $500,000 to carry his baby.
Something about Michael Jackson, the world had decided, was simply not quite right. By the end of 1997, something had changed in Michael Jackson. Again. The aggression of history began to give way to something slower, more inward. He became a father. Prince Michael I was born in February 1997. Paris followed in April 1998. He retreated further into Netherlands. The vast, private world he had built in the Santa Ynez Valley, the amusement park, the zoo, the cinema, the place he had designed consciously as the childhood he had never been allowed to have.
His time might be consumed by bottle warmings and diaper changings, but Michael Jackson has found time to learn a few new dance moves, and the man who once only wore black is raging in red for his dazzling new music video.
Earlier in the year, he would release Blood on the Dance Floor, History in the Mix, a remix collection alongside 5 new tracks. Here is a fact worth sitting with. It is, To this day, the best-selling remix album ever made. Over 6 million copies sold. A commercial achievement that most artists would consider the peak of their career. And yet, in the context of Michael Jackson's life, it reads as a retreat. Something released into a world that was no longer organising itself around him. In Europe, it was a genuine event. The fan base there, always more unconditional,
The best dance album in history.
always less interested in the tabloid narrative, received it like a return, like proof that he was still there, still capable, still theirs. It went to number 1 in the UK. In America, it peaked at number 24 on the Billboard 200. 24. For context, Bad had debuted at number 1, Dangerous had debuted at number 1, History had debuted at number 1. Yes, this was a remix album at its core, but it was a Michael Jackson remix album, and yet, it missed the top 20.
Weird. You're strange. And I don't like you. You're scaring these kids.
And the music itself? Dark, paranoid. The title track built around a femme fatale who may or may not be a metaphor for everything that had been closing in on him since 1993, sat completely at odds with what the charts wanted in 1997. The late 90s belonged to other artists. The Spice Girls were telling a generation to say what they want, what they really, really want. Elsewhere, Madonna, Mariah and Celine were operating at stadium scale. Bigger, brighter, more controlled than ever. Designed for escapism. And hip-hop, which had been rising since the early decade, was now firmly mainstream, with Jay-Z, Nas and Lauryn Hill defining what modern music was. The culture had fractured into something more plural. The idea of a single figure commanding the entire landscape, the way Jackson had commanded it in the 80s, was becoming structurally impossible. The game itself had changed. And here is the thing about Michael Jackson at the end of the 1990s that is easy to miss if you're looking for a simple story of decline. He was still one of the biggest figures in music. His catalogue was like no other. His influence on pop, on R&B, on the very grammar of the music video was embedded in practically every artist operating at that level. Britney Spears learning to command a stage, Justin Timberlake learning to move, Usher, Beyonce. The debt was obvious, and none of them were shy about acknowledging it.
I just think he's a genius. He's not only an incredible songwriter, but he's an incredible performer, everything.
There aren't as many performances that are timeless, and I would say of the top 10 of those performances, probably 7 or 8 of them go to Michael Jackson.
How does that feel when people say you remind them of Michael?
I mean, it's an honor.
I'm so happy I got to tell him on numerous occasions how much he impacted my life. Yeah. I mean, any amount of success that I had, I wouldn't have had without Michael Jackson. He's taught me so much.
He had become, without quite meaning to, a foundation. Something other people built on. And foundations, by definition, don't move. But what he was had changed. In the 80s, he was a force of nature, something otherworldly. By the end of the 1990s, he was no longer setting the pace. He was trying to keep up with it. The world was moving on. In fact, by this point, he was something more complicated. A contested figure. A man whose name had become a kind of Rorschach test. What you thought of Michael Jackson said something about who you were and what you believed. A genius exploited and persecuted, or a deeply troubled man who had used his power in ways that could not be forgiven, or, most uncomfortably, both. By the end of the decade, the question wasn't who Michael Jackson was, it was whether anyone would ever agree on the answer again.
Should not say he's Jacko. I'm not a Jacko. I'm Jackson.
How do you feel when they call you
Wacko Jacko? Where'd that come from? Well, some English tabloid. I have a heart and I have feelings. I feel that when you do that to me. It's not nice. To make ugly stories and gossip and rumors and to be vicious and evil and ugly, that is garbage. Don't buy it. Don't buy into it and don't believe it.
Here is what the 90s did to Michael Jackson. It took a man that the world had put so high that nothing had ever been able to reach him, and then it started pulling him down, piece by piece. The allegations of 1993 were the earthquake, but the cracks had been forming since the late 80s, since the press decided he was fair game, since Wacko Jacko became the star of the Michael Jackson show.
It's overshadowed his music and his artistry. You don't first think, what a great artist, what a definitive performer. You think, what a weird guy.
By the time the decade ended, Michael Jackson had been accused, investigated, settled, married, divorced, remarried, fathered children, bought his record label, toured the world, and made some of the most emotionally raw music of his career. He had done all of this in public, under a level of scrutiny that was, and remains, almost impossible to comprehend. And yet, he was still standing. Not unbreakable, not the same, but standing. The story didn't end in 1999. You know that. He stepped back from the spotlight, retreated to Netherlands, spent time, for the first time in decades, simply being a father, or trying to be. And somewhere in the quiet of that, he began writing again, recording again, building what he believed would be his return. He would call his next album Invincible. The title alone tells you everything about where his head was. Even after everything he had endured, he still believed he could reassert himself, still believed the narrative could be reclaimed. Whether that was delusion or defiance depends on who you are. But that album, and everything that came with it, has its own story. One that has already been investigated on this channel. Ultimately, the 90s didn't resolve anything. They just set the stage for something even bigger. Because the 2000s didn't just bring more controversy. They brought a camera crew into his life, they brought a criminal trial, they brought an acquittal that satisfied almost no one. They brought financial collapse on a scale that was almost incomprehensible. They brought the announcement of 50 comeback shows at the O2 Arena in London. And then, on the 25th of June 2009, they brought the end. Everything that happened in the 2000s, every single moment of it, was shaped by what the 90s had done to him. The siege mentality, the isolation, the dependency, the inability to trust. The 90s didn't finish Michael Jackson, but they built the conditions that made everything that followed possible. That's what a decade can do to a person. Even a person who once seemed and claimed to be invincible.